Hey guys, welcome on in to today's video where we're going to be doing a breakdown of a possible matchup for the 2020 presidential election between Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand, the senator from New York, and of course on the Republican side, current president, Republican Donald Trump. If you're interested in getting more political forecasting, analysis, and commentary, you can click that subscribe button and be sure to check out all of our prediction matchup videos over on our YouTube channel. So coming into this one, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen a little bit of the information and data that we're going to use for this video. Up at top there in the upper right-hand corner, we have the 2016 map, the red and dark red states being ones that Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton in, and then, of course, the blue states being ones that Clinton was able to win. So Gillibrand, below that, we have her favorable, unfavorable numbers, and it's a situation where the favorable, unfavorable numbers have positive and negative connotations for each candidate. So Gillibrand, of course, very low name recognition across the country. She obviously has a bit more name recognition over in the Northeast, being from New York, but still, nonetheless, her favorable, unfavorable numbers very low on both sides of things, about a tie and very low, with well over 50% of the electorate having no opinion of Gillibrand. And then on Trump's side, he obviously has that name recognition, which is a big positive for him, and especially being the incumbent in this 2020 hypothetical matchup. His negatives, though, are that his unfavorable numbers are quite significantly higher than you would typically see from a candidate that would have a tremendous amount of success in a presidential election. But if going against a candidate that has very low name recognition, that definitely would help Trump in a big way in this case. Of course, if Gillibrand was able to win the Democratic nomination, that would change and she would get her name and message out there more, which might help her if people are able to really feel the message that she's portraying and want to vote for her. But still, she has a big hill to climb, and I think that she could have troubles against Donald Trump in a potential matchup. Gillibrand, she doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of love from the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and progressive independents, and that was something that hurt Hillary Clinton quite a bit in the 2016 election. Also, Gillibrand, she's kind of referred to as Hillary Clinton light because she's the senator from New York. Of course, Clinton used to be the senator from New York, but Gillibrand, she has aspirations to possibly one day run for president, and as a result, she's been changing her positions on certain things, becoming more progressive, and a lot of that is to try to align herself to have success in a potential primary on the Democratic ticket, because those Democratic voters that vote in a presidential primary are going to probably have a little bit more left-leaning on things. So she's done stuff like she's not taking corporate PAC money anymore. She's for universal health care and things like that. But a lot of progressives are still very hesitant on a candidate like this, who has definitely taken that corporate money and kind of gone in that Hillary Clinton mode of kind of politician. So it'll be interesting to see how that would play itself out for Gillibrand going into the future. But I don't also think that that's necessarily a big positive for her, and the fact that she's had to change her positions on these things to try to get that type of support from the progressive base. So I think that she could potentially have a tough time going against Donald Trump in a 2020 election. So what I'm going to do here is go through the states and give the ones that I think would be safe for Gillibrand over to her side, and then do the same for Donald Trump, and then go through and talk about what would be more of the battleground scenario. So starting off with Gillibrand, the safe states would be Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico. I'm going to leave Colorado for now. That can be a competitive state, as well as Nevada, two states that Hillary Clinton was able to carry. And we'll also leave Minnesota, which was a very competitive race in 2016. But then Washington, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. And again, in this northeastern Democratic section of the United States, where Gillibrand has a bit more name recognition, certainly would expect her to do better. So also New York and Vermont, and we'll leave New Hampshire and Maine for now. And then also we would give her Illinois, which is also a very Democratic state, especially in presidential elections. As we can see here, Hillary Clinton winning the state in blowout fashion by about 17 percentage points over Donald Trump. Definitely a Midwestern state there where Democrats do very well in presidential elections. Now moving over to Donald Trump, his safe states would be Alaska, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. I'm also going to give him Missouri, which can be a competitive state, but going against somebody like Gillibrand, I think Trump would continue to do very well in Missouri. As you can see here, he won it by about almost 19 percentage points against Hillary Clinton, so I feel like that would be pretty safe. Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. And I'm also going to leave up Georgia for now because that was a very competitive race between Clinton and Trump there. And then I'm also giving Trump, of course, Kentucky and West Virginia. This is an area where I think progressive candidates, someone like Bernie Sanders, for instance, could potentially grab those states against a Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup, but somebody more like Gillibrand, who's viewed as more of that Hillary Clinton mold, I think she would also significantly have a hard time in these kind of states. And then also Indiana, the Pence factor, Trump did very well there in 2016. So that's going to be the map that I have set for now. We have Gillibrand at 187, Trump at 126. Now we're going to go through the rest of the states from west over to east. And the last area we're going to talk about is the Midwest, because that was the part of the country that decided that 2016 election and is what it seems like any 2020 race might come down to how those states play themselves out. So starting with Nevada, very close election there between Clinton and Trump. Clinton getting over Trump by about 2.5 percentage points, a state that does have shifting demographics, becoming more Democratic. And although I think Gillibrand might actually lose this state potentially to Trump, almost like a 50-50 scenario, especially because she doesn't have that name recognition out on this side of the country, I still think at the end of the day that Gillibrand would be able to pick up Nevada. In a similar case for Colorado, even though she doesn't have that name recognition now, we still think that her message would get out there enough out west to Colorado, run up to the presidential election where she'd also be able to keep Colorado, Clinton winning that state by about 5 percentage points. Also a state that's becoming a bit more Democratic as the years go on. Now, a couple of states here where we think Trump can do well against Gillibrand. Arizona, he won the state in 2016, as well as Texas. Two states that also have a slight shift in demographics that are becoming more Democratic over time, but still, we feel like the lack of name recognition, the fact that Trump was able to get over Clinton in these two states, probably would be able to carry them again this time around. And again, guys, going to be talking about it a lot throughout the rest of this video, the fact that Gillibrand, she just doesn't have that name recognition, definitely hurting her, and going to be hurting her anyways in a lot of these states that we're going to talk about. But moving on over here to the Southeast, Georgia, a state that went for Trump by about 5 percentage points. And the reason that Georgia is so much more competitive than these other southeastern states that surround it is the fact that the Atlanta population and the suburban areas around that becoming a bit more Democrat over the course of time, and a big population center there in that city, which is making this state a bit more competitive, almost kind of shifting more towards like a Florida, which is definitely, of course, the most consistently contested state down here in the Southeast in these presidential elections. But Trump, again, Gillibrand not very well known in this part of the country, and I think he would also be able to keep his lead in that state. And also, we're going to carry that over into Florida, a similar case to Trump being able to keep Georgia. Also, we feel like him being the incumbent, name recognition, big one here. Again, we feel like Trump would be able to hold on to Florida as well. Now, moving on up into North Carolina, you can see here Hillary Clinton losing the state by about 3.5 percentage points, so very competitive. Close state there. Obama won North Carolina in 2008, lost it in 2012. One of those states that's extremely competitive right now in the presidential landscape. But again, we feel like Donald Trump would be able to hold on and keep this state. Now we're going to be moving in more to the Northeast, where Gillibrand has that more of a brand and political name recognition there. We feel like Gillibrand would be able to carry that over into states like New Hampshire and Maine. They were very close. They still went for Hillary Clinton in 2016. We feel like Gillibrand would be able to keep those states in 2020. Moving on down to Virginia, this is a state that has shifted over and definitely become more blue. We can see here Hillary Clinton winning the state by about 5 percentage points or so. And we feel like Gillibrand has enough name recognition here in this part of the country where she would also be able to keep those gains that the Democrats have been able to pick up in a state like Virginia over the last decade or so. So now moving in to the Midwest, where this election would be decided. So Gillibrand doesn't have that brand name here, no pun intended, in the Midwest. That hurts her. And Clinton, of course, not the most popular candidate by any means in this part of the country, but the fact that she was such a well-known figure made it at least competitive with Trump in these states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and Minnesota, for instance. But just to start, with Trump, he was able to win Iowa and Ohio by such significant margins over Clinton in that about 8 to 10% range that we feel like he would be able to hold on to those gains in a hypothetical matchup against Gillibrand. Also, Gillibrand, you have to note that she's not the most charismatic speaker and speech giver, and that can definitely have an effect. For instance, Obama, very similar in alignment to somebody like a Gillibrand or even a Hillary Clinton in terms of a lot of his policies, but the fact that he was such a motivational and inspirational speaker and could really move people with the speeches that he would give, and doing very well in debates, for instance, allowed him to separate the gap and keep these states in the Midwest on the Democratic side. Trump being a very populist and also being very good in terms of being able to speak to crowds, and also his performances in the debates definitely would help him, I think, in a potential matchup against Gillibrand. So at the end of the day, in terms of these very close states here, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, I think that Minnesota being a little bit more left-leaning than these other states, just by a little bit of a margin, and the fact that there's not a whole lot of love in the state of Minnesota for Trump. He lost the primary there. We feel like Gillibrand would be able to keep Minnesota, but the other three key states here we would give to Donald Trump. So Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So at the end of the day, this is how we see the map playing out between Gillibrand and Donald Trump. Donald Trump getting 305 electoral votes, Gillibrand at 233. And you might notice something here. It's very similar to the 2016 result. In fact, it is the exact same map that Hillary Clinton had against Trump. And the reason I have the exact same map for Gillibrand and Clinton is the positives for Gillibrand in comparison to Clinton is she is viewed as slightly more progressive, and she has moved her positions there, so I think that can help her. But again, the big negative for her is she just isn't all that well known across the country, and she would have to do a lot of work spreading her message and getting out there, and I think that's just too much of a hill for her to climb to get over the hump and perform better than what Clinton was able to do against Trump. Let's not forget that Trump lost to Clinton by about 3 million votes in the popular vote. I don't even think Gillibrand would be able to necessarily win the popular vote against Donald Trump in an election scenario, and maybe at the end of the day, she even loses some of these states like Minnesota, Nevada, Virginia, Colorado, for instance, maybe even like a New Hampshire. But that's how I have this map playing out, at least at this point in time. Again, guys, if you're interested in getting more of these political forecasting videos, you can click that subscribe button. Check out all of our forecasting and prediction videos over on our YouTube channel, and we hope to see you guys back here for future videos. Bye.